What country do you come from?
I'm Palestinian.
Palestinian? I've never seen a Palestinian. Well, guess what? This ride is on me. Yes, sir.
This is the only time we hear Elia Suleiman speak in his films. In the 4 acclaimed feature films and a couple of shorts that we had the opportunity to watch, he says he's a Palestinian from Nazareth to a taxi driver who is fascinated to have someone from Palestine in his taxi. Suleiman finally pronounces it in his last film, It Must Be Heaven. But it is this identity and overwhelming paradoxes around it that he carries across his filmography, offering us poetries on screen, in the process all of which shout out to the world, what is it like living in the state of Palestine? There is an ongoing Israel-Palestine armed conflict. We pray and hope for a lasting ceasefire. In solidarity with the people of Palestine, we pay our tribute to director Elia Suleiman, perhaps the strongest voice which represented them in cinema. This was a scene from Suleiman's Cannes Jury Award film, Divine Intervention, from the year 2002. Unbelievable, isn't it, the way Suleiman depicts what it means to be at Jerusalem? He shows this to be a normal day in the life of the householder, with such attacks on his house happening regularly. Consider the casualness with which the man extinguishes a deadly attack at his home, as if years of experiences have made him numb to such instances. Suleiman doesn't spend a word, any dialogue or messaging to get this idea communicated. It's just a sequence presented in rather comical way, and the name Jerusalem slowly appears on screen. The entire filmmaking of Elia Suleiman is built up on such shattering set pieces, which speak volumes about lives of Palestinians using black comedy. Suleiman watches these fragments from the life of his countrymen as a silent observer and collages them into satire. A silent observer from his childhood, as we see him in his 3rd film, The Time That Remains, where he examines the creation of Israel from 1948 to the present day in his signature deadpan comedy style. He shows himself as the silent kid facing questions from his teacher for his remarks on America in the class. We later see him as the silent teenager and then the adult filmmaker as we know him and watch him in his films. The choice of silence in itself is a political statement. While on one hand it creates cinematic images of satire on screen, it also advocates the fact that as a common man from Palestine, one hardly has a voice. They hardly have a position to speak.
روح على البيت.
أنا روح على البيت؟ أنت اللي روح على البيت.
Even beyond Suleiman himself, the characters of his films have few dialogues between them. They are at most monologues where the character in control passes on his or her ideas or decisions. And in all films, we see Elia Suleiman gaze at his country in silence. This is a filmmaker whose every frame, every technique, every dialogue, and every craft is a political statement about his homeland. In his silent gags, Suleiman reminds us of Buster Keaton, Jack Tati, Charlie Chaplin, Robert Bresson, or Roy Anderson in his deadpan comedy. Like the Trampin' Chaplin films, Suleiman is the protagonist of his own films, often getting into demanding situations. But unlike Keaton or Chaplin, Suleiman is more of a passive witness rather than an active character. In his first film, Chronicle of a Disappearance, we see Suleiman sitting quietly outside a Nazareth souvenir shop, watching intently as the shop proprietor uses water from tap to fill the little bottles of holy water. We see a Palestinian actress searching for a rented apartment in Israeli West Jerusalem in vain. And every time Suleiman tries to address an audience about his upcoming film, he can't talk because of some technical failure. In these snubs and silences, Suleiman creates a subjective summary of the unsettled quality of life in his homeland, including that of his parents, his father and mother, whom he often remembers and pays tribute through his films. In his second film, Divine Intervention, which happens to be his most acclaimed one, we see a more enraged Elia Suleiman. The film, which starts with an attack on a Santa Claus and ends in a silent Suleiman, infuriated within like the steaming pressure cooker he looks at while his mother asks him to let go. This is a film between hope and fantasy which treats war as a cosmic joke. In a meta-presentation, Suleiman plays ES, a filmmaker who visits his dying father in Nazareth and picks up scenes of a script that resemble the film we are watching. He regularly meets his lover from Ramallah at the Al-Ram checkpoint that separates them, simply to hold hands and watch the frustrated travelers while the soldiers harass them. The theme music of Mani Ratnam's Bombay by A.R. Rahman plays in the background in one of the moments of oppression which we see through the lenses of a black comedy. Music that played in the cinemas of our country, depicting one of the most harrowing events of India, becomes the same music which another filmmaker from another part of the world uses for echoing the crisis of his homeland. Music and cinema define borders in relaying human stories of pain. And moments later, the film takes flight again, literally this time as Suleiman flies off a balloon bearing Yasser Arafat's grinning face that floats past the Israeli checkpost over the city of Jerusalem. The amazing cinematic images gives you shivers while you witness hopes of Suleiman and his homeland soaring high on screen, suddenly breaking free from the paranoia, resentment and craziness we have been watching till then. None presents the pulse and point of view of the Palestinian common man as Elia Suleiman does through his silent images. Through simple lines of profound depth, like one of the characters of his film says, while the whole world drinks to forget, a Palestinian drinks to remember. It's past of peace.
لو سهلة زمان عنا وينك يا رجل؟ والله اشتقنا لك. وين انت ليش تتصلش؟
A scene from his third film, The Time That Remains, where Suleiman sets up another brilliant comic set piece to portray the daily violence in the life of his countrymen and how they have got indifferent and adjusted to it. We will find neighbors as a key theme in his films, harming or cursing each other indifferently or casually trespassing boundaries. Neighbors as Israel and Palestine are.
جارتنا ليش بترمي زبالتك على ساحتنا؟ مش عيب؟
جارنا، ما هي زبالتنا اللي عم برميها على ساحتكو، هي زبالتكو اللي عم ترموها على حكورتنا.
طيب وإذا برضو عيب.
The other motive is the way cops, soldiers, or any other government forces are caricaturized in his films. I like to make them dance, says Suleiman. I like to show their vulnerabilities because the system of authority is very easy to crack. Watch this amazingly beautiful scene where a police patrol warns a group of Palestinians from partying and eventually the threats become a part of the groove and music. This man is a genius. One might argue, as critic Stuart Klavan says, that while Suleiman unmasks the absurdity of the Jewish nationalism, he doesn't affirm to the Palestinian nationalism. While there might be some truth there, with this film, It Must Be Heaven, Suleiman definitely goes beyond talking only about the absurdities in Israel and Palestine. He travels to Paris and New York in this film, and in his persuasive view, these celebrated cities have also become a microcosm of Palestine. The harassment by the police, the array of checkpoints, or the tension and paranoia we are habituated seeing Suleiman face in his homeland are similarly found in these apparently progressive free world cities. In a beautiful scene, we find him imagining everyone carrying sophisticated arms. Suleiman, who is used to seeing weapons around people in his homeland, visualizes the suspicion in the minds of bigger cities as the weapons. The world today has become a global Palestine, we hear him say in the interviews, and Suleiman, in his trademark way, exposes the mainstreaming of the ferocities of the world with his usual nonchalance. The last time when we had worked on this tribute video on Elia Suleiman, there were ongoing tensions between Israel and Palestine. Now as we talk about him again, the two countries are still at war, with bombings on children, women, hospitals, journalists, and relief workers. These human rights violations amount to genocide of thousands of innocent people. We hope there's ceasefire soon. We hope that humanity prevails. Keep an eye on Mubi and other OTT platforms not to miss out on the opportunity of watching the works of one of the best working directors of our times. Someone who fights and voices for his country in silence through cinema. That is all from us today. Thank you for watching.